Hi, my name is Scott Pappas. I'm a private wealth advisor in Houston, Texas. Let's talk about extremely wealthy families, families with 100 or 200 or 300 million dollars. What is the founder or the patriarch or matriarch of that family? What is their biggest concern with having $300 million? A, it's not about them running out of money. B, it's not about their kids running out of money. But chances are your biggest fear is and should be that the third generation or fourth generation is going to run out of money because they haven't been properly trained on how to invest the money and how to spend the money. All right, and a quick note from our attorneys. The information here in this podcast is for general educational and informational purposes only. It is not to be construed as tax or legal advice. Talk to your own CPA, tax consultant, or attorneys for specific recommendations for your situation. So, what is the shirt sleeve phenomenon? The shirt sleeve phenomenon is where the first generation, let's say grandpa, starts a business from nothing and builds it up into a good size business. The second generation, called the son or the daughter, comes in and takes it from where he started and blows it up in a good way. Blows up the sales, revenue, everything increases, and now you got a very valuable company. At this point, let's say the founder or the grandpa is 85 years old, the son is 60 years old, and then the third generation, call him junior or the son or daughter, is about 25 years old. The third generation, they've known pretty much just a life of privilege, just about private cars or private schools, private jets, and really probably haven't had a part-time job in high school or even through college. That's the danger, is that the first and second generation, they're not going to run out of money. They've seen the hard work. They know what it takes to build up a business and to be fiscally responsible and how to grow revenue and start and run a company. That third generation, though, hasn't known the struggle. They haven't seen the sacrifice, and they think just kind of money grows on trees. And so what can happen is that third generation will just go on a spending spree because they are not accountable and they've never really been trained on what they can spend, on how to grow the assets. And so what happens is by the fourth generation is born, they basically have to start over if the third generation spent the money. That happens a lot more than you would think. There's some famous families that you've probably heard about where they've had huge amounts of wealth and they've ended up going broke by the third or fourth generation. One example is the Vanderbilts. They had $100 million in 1877, richest family in America. By the time it got to grandkids and the great-grandkids, they didn't have much money. I think you've heard of Gloria Vanderbilt and Anderson Cooper. That's kind of the plight. By the third or fourth generation, the money was all spent. The Stroh's Brewery Company, in the 1980s, they were on top of the world. They had the Stroh's Brewery dog. They had leading beer sales, hundreds of millions of dollars. But A, they didn't see light beer coming, and B, they invested too much in real estate, made some bad choices, and money was gone. So it happens. It happens more than you would think. And it's just a repeatable phenomenon that's seen throughout history, and it's very, very avoidable. On the other side of that, you can see some of the richer families in the world that have had family offices that have done extremely well. Take the Rockefellers, take the Carnegies, same thing. 120 years ago, 150 years ago, they had hundreds of millions of dollars, some of the richest people on the planet. They started family offices, they started structure, they started governance and a process to keep the money, or to invest the money, to make money, and not to spend too much money. And the result is they still are some of the wealthiest families out there on the planet. Why? Because family offices work. So the name of my article is Shirt Sleeve to Shirt Sleeve, 3 Generations, Why Your Wealthy Client May Need to Start Their Own Family Office. This also applies to you. If you're a founder of a business and you've started a business, now it's worth $50 million or $200 million or $500 million, this applies to you. And the family office structure can help prevent that shirt sleeve phenomenon. So what is a family office? A family office is an organization and staff set up by a family to manage the financial and personal affairs of that wealthy family. Generally, it takes 50 to 100 million. 100 million is generally the minimum to start a family office to where it makes sense economically. What do the family offices do? Well, they take care of the investment management, they take care of the tax planning, they coordinate with the CPAs. They also handle what we call lifestyle management, taking care of vacation homes, the staff at those homes, relocating assets like boats and cars, planes and things like that. They do the estate planning, they coordinate the philanthropic activities. Some people just focus on taking care of the champagne problems that a family office does. In other words, they make sure that when they travel somewhere, they don't have to wait for limos or buses or planes or anything else like that. They don't have to pay bills and do everything else. The true function and the true beauty of a family office is not to take care of the champagne problems, but rather to ensure that there's multi-generational wealth. And that mainly goes to training up the next generation and having governance and procedures in place for the family office to run. So the true calling of a family office and what I believe is the mission critical of a family office are three things. Number one is the investment management. The family office usually can, and its objective is to do a better or much better job in the investment process and making money than the family can do on their own. Number two, the other critical thing that they need to do is train the next generation. They need to train the next generation in how to invest the money and what good investments look like. They need to train the next generation as to due diligence and what good due diligence looks like when you start a family office or when you start an investment and decide if you're going to invest or not. And also training the next generation for the spending, trying to keep that spending at 4% or less of the assets so that they don't run out of money. So that's the second critical function. The third critical function that a family office does is governance. What is governance? Governance is just another expression or another term for having procedures and processes in place to where key decisions are made. In other words, it is the kind of the antithesis of having one person make all the investment and spending decisions. Instead of that, with governance, you have several people involved. Everybody has an assigned role. There may be a board of directors and a voting board that votes on all the major purchases, on major investment decisions, on distributions to the heirs. So those three things, the investment management, doing a better job than the family can do on their own, the training the next generation, and governance, having rules, processes, and procedures in place to prevent bad decisions from happening, are the three mission critical functions of a family office. Okay, so what are the three models or three different ways to run the various functions of a family office? First of all, there's the in-house model. The second is the outsource model. And third is the hybrid, which is a combination of the first two. So let's talk about the in-house model of how a family office is run. In the in-house model, all the functions that go into running a family office are done in-house, as the name implies. So for example, your portfolio management is all done in-house with a whole team of portfolio managers and people that are executing the trades. Same thing with the tax and accounting. The tax and accounting is all done by basically your staff of CPAs, similar to if you had your own CPA firm, where everybody works directly for you as opposed to a CPA firm. And same thing with legal. You have your own staff of attorneys where all the work is done in-house as opposed to subletting it out or subcontracting it out to different law firms. So that's the in-house model. Okay, one advantage of the in-house model is that you are in control, or the family office is in control of all the various functions, and you're not relying on third-party vendors, essentially, to do the work. This can result in more consistent performance, more consistent outcomes from the in-house model. The downside of the in-house model is that it's extremely expensive, and generally you won't set up an in-house model family office unless you've got $500 million to $1 billion or more in assets to manage. The The second way, and a very popular way that family offices are set up for the functions, is the outsource model. And that, as the name implies, is where you outsource all the functions or most of the functions to different outside CPA firms, tax firms, concierge firms, accounting firms, and whatnot. So an advantage to this is that it's generally a lot more cost effective in that you don't need $500 million or $1 billion to do an outsource model. You can run an outsource model really with 50 million or 100 million, even less. The concept there is that the family office will pick the best attorney for a specific function. It might be for estate planning, and then another attorney for litigation. And same thing with the tax. You can contract out and hire a CPA firm that does all the strategy and consulting, and maybe a different firm that does just the tax preparation work for the different entities involved in the family office. So the upside of the outsourced family office model is that it can be much more cost effective. The downside is that you have people that are not working for you, and therefore one of the common complaints is that you have to be careful that the people that you're outsourcing it to are giving you unbiased advice that truly is in the best interest of the family office. The third model of how to run the various functions of a family office is the hybrid model. And as the name implies, it's a combination of the in-house model and the outsource model. In my opinion, the hybrid model is the most attractive model if you have assets in the range of $100 million to really $1 billion. You can choose based on your current providers and who you trust and who you have working for you or who you want to bring in-house. You can choose which functions you want to keep in-house and which functions you want to outsource. So, for example, in the hybrid model, you might have your own tax attorneys that do the tax prep and the strategy for you that work in-house, and it may just be having one or two tax professionals that do that. And you may outsource the legal aspect of it and outsource the investment management portion of that. For example, it's expensive to run an investment portfolio team. So if you outsource it to a brokerage firm or a money management firm, that often eliminates a lot of expenses in there. So let's talk about the different types of family offices that you'll see. You'll see single family offices, you'll see multifamily offices, and then sometimes you'll see embedded family offices. So what are those three different types? So a single family office, as the name implies, is a family office that is just focused on servicing the needs of one single family. It could be multi-generations. It could be the grandfathers, the parents, and the kids, even grandkids. But regardless, it's just one family that's being taken care of by the family office. So the other type of family office is a multifamily office. And multifamily office, as the name implies, is multiple families that are managed by one family office. Multiple family offices or multifamily offices can come about in a couple different ways. One way they come about is when two or more wealthy families team together because they see, for example, what one wealthy family is doing, they see the returns, they talk about it, and the other family or friend that they're talking about says, hey, let's join forces and we'll office together. We'll get some economies of scale because we'll be doing similar investments. And so that's one type of multifamily office. The other type of multifamily office is essentially just a wealth management firm that specializes in ultra high net worth clients. And so they may have 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10, for example, very wealthy families that they manage. The third type of family office structure is the embedded family office. And those are generally harder to see. You don't hear or see much about those. Embedded family office is a family office that's contained within a company that's a functioning, profitable company, usually run by a single family. A family business might have been in business for 30 years or 20 years or 15 years. And within there, the owners have created a bunch of wealth for themselves. Rather than spin out and have a different location and a different staff, they simply have some of the employees that are working for the company do the functions of the family office. For example, the concierge services, the investment management, the tax and accounting. The problem with this is that those functions can get muddled up together. And so you would ask, well, who's paying for the concierge services, or who's paying for the tax prep for the families or for the family trust? Is it the company, or is it the individual or the individual trust? And oftentimes you can run afoul of the law with the IRS if you have a company paying for services that are really just services for the individual. So embedded family offices can sometimes be problematic, but they're extremely functional because you have the staff there and everything is contained in one location. Okay, so what are the benefits? What are the positive effects of having a family office? First of all, there's a potential for higher returns. Another benefit of having a family office is that generally it's the decision making is divided up among several people, or an investment committee or a board of the family office. What that does is it prevents one person from having the say on the investments or the spending. One example of a pitfall that avoids is just the numbers about mental health and alcoholism and addiction. It's some figure is like 1 in 5 people will have some type of mental health experience or breakdown over their lifetime. So you don't want the person that's the gatekeeper for a $300 million pot of assets to be going through a personal crisis with addiction or alcoholism or having a mental breakdown. The kind of bottom line, with a family office, you just basically reduce the likelihood of very expensive mistakes. So what happens if you don't have a family office? Well, generally, families rarely have the expertise or the staff to properly vet investment opportunities. So there's an increased chance at best of subpar returns, and at worst, you have increased chances of that you're going to invest into some type of a fraud or Ponzi scheme. So without a family office, you lose economies of scale. With a family office, generally assets are pooled together, for investments, so to meet investment minimums. So let's say there's a private equity fund or a hedge fund that has a $10 million minimum. If a family has $100 million, they can aggregate those generally. So $2 million might come from one account or one trust, $3 million from another, $5 million from another. Whereas if somebody is just running their own portion and they have their 30 or 40 million, they're not going to be able to make the $10 million minimum. So you lose economies of scale. You lose economies of scale when it comes to negotiating fees at the brokerage or the custodians. For example, if you have that 100 or 300 or $500 million chunk of assets versus several 30 and $50 million assets, you're generally able to negotiate much better pricing on the cost of the trades or the management of the separately managed accounts. Or if you're borrowing against the portfolio, generally you're able to get much better terms when you're borrowing or getting approved for a credit line of $200 or $300 million versus a credit line of $10 or $20 million. So without the family office structure, you lose the economies of scale. Without a family office, generally there's no plan to train the next generation. Some families may do a good job of training their kids or their kids or grandkids on how to be good heirs, how to make good investments, how to spend wisely. But if that's not the focal point of a family, then you lose that benefit of training the next generation. And again, one of the linchpins of a family office is to train the next generation. That is one of the 3 things that every family office member should, when they wake up in the morning, they should think, oh yeah, training the next generation. What are we doing today that's going to help train the next generation? Without a family office, oftentimes you don't have any objective, clear oversight. Oversight into some of the investment decisions that are being made, oversight into the many, many moving parts. I'm a wealth advisor. My Series 65 as a registered investment advisor. I'm also an attorney. What I see from my unique standpoint and position is I see the legal side of things and some of the issue spotting that goes on, as well as the financial side of things. As a family office manager will coordinate the CPA, the tax attorneys, the entity attorneys, and the family activities so that everything goes together in a more cohesive fashion. As I mentioned, the article that I wrote is called From Shirt Sleeve to Shirt Sleeve in 3 Generations, Why Your Wealthy Client May Need to Start Their Own Family Office. One of the main reasons, or how it can benefit you if you're an attorney or a CPA and you're watching this, as you help your client set up a family office, you increase your credibility and you increase the way that your client views you. They see you as a trusted partner that needs to be involved in the decision-making process, a trusted partner that has their back and is going to make sure that the other attorneys or CPAs, the other professionals that they use, truly have their family in mind when they make those recommendations. So it keeps you involved in the process. Bottom line is it helps you keep a client. Otherwise, the consultant or the attorney setting it up may just slide themselves in there or slide one of their recommended firms in there that the family doesn't know and that may not have the family's best interest. So by you staying involved in the process of exploring and possibly setting up a family office for your client, you do yourself a favor and you definitely do your clients a favor by staying involved and watching their back at all times. So let's talk about governance. Does a single family office really need governance? Well, let's take a look at the founder of a company. Let's say the founder of a company sold the business, built it up, sells it for $200 million. That founder is 60 years old. He or she is hands-on making the investment decisions, is doing a marvelous job of making those investment decisions, and obviously knows what to spend, not obviously, but knows what to spend and how much they can spend, and grows the assets. Everything works great, right? Why have any governance? Well, let's take a look at the next generation, what happens. If the proverbial bus runs over the founder, then you have either a spouse that wasn't involved in the investment management decisions or the spending decisions, or you have the next generation, you have the son or daughter that's now having to take over the company that nobody bothered to train. Because remember, the founder was doing a great job of running the company and the assets were growing. But when that person, the founder, steps out and is no longer able to make those decisions without governance, without having the training up the next generation, all can be lost. And so that's why it's so critical to have that second leg of the stool, the training the next generation in mind when you're setting up a family office, and also to have the third leg of the stool, the governance part of the stool on there, so that there's procedures that investment decisions are made, there's procedures and processes for spending decisions or distribution decisions to get made, and you're training up the next generation.